everybody. Welcome back to Rabbi Winston, Rabbi Pinchas Winston, speaking on the end of days and geula topics, Redemption Thursdays. From the very first of the month of Adar here in Israel, we get very excited about Purim, which is coming up, and that's why I'm dressed like this. I volunteered at a soldier refreshment center today. They enjoyed it very much, so got everybody in the mood. Thank you for joining us. And before Rabbi starts, I want you to have, please check his website, 36.org, where you can read all of his amazing Torahs around every subject you can imagine, with Jewish history, with Jewish life and philosophy and geula and the Parsha of the week, Parsha HaShavua. This is one of his newer books. Can you see it, Rabbi? Is it up there?
No, because your background's making it disappear.
My background's making it disappear. Okay. So anyway, it's a children's book. It's a wonderful children's book. Another one called Redemption to Redemption. And this is what the Rabbi will be speaking about tonight, I imagine, where we know the whole entire redemption process starts at Purim time and ends at or the other way around. Maybe he'll explain that. But without further ado, thank you, Rabbi, for joining us. And Rabbi Winston.
Thank you. Okay, this is Purim is next week, B'ezras Hashem. So we'll just finish off with a very important idea before Purim comes in. Where to start? There's so much connection. There's so much. That's it's like a real huge, massive web of ideas that on one hand it can be simplified with a few concepts. But it's like going to a class, let's say of grade 4 students. And you're a physicist, and someone says to you, well, how does the sun work? And you're thinking to yourself, thermonuclear explosion taking place in the sun, and atom. It's very complicated. It's very complex how light works and things like that. But if you start talking about things like that, these class, you'll lose them with the first few words you speak. So you're trying to think of a whole different way to try to bring it down to earth, to explain to them that they can relate to it, even though it's not going to be accurate, because the truth is much more complicated. The truth is complicated, even though we'd like to simplify things, and it's important to simplify things. But ultimately speaking, look at the Torah. The Torah is massive, 300,000 some odd letters and 85,000 some odd words and 613 mitzvahs and stories and concepts and stories within the stories and stories within the stories within the stories within the stories. It's like goes so multiple levels. You have Pshat, Rebbe's, Drush, and Sod. Simple understanding, hints from letters or words in the Torah, and then you have what we call the exegetical level of learning, which is the Medrash for the most part, the Gemara, Agarata, and then you have Sod, which of course is mysticism and Kabbalah and the deeper, and it goes deeper, to the point that some levels of Kabbalah are just so abstract that most people wouldn't even be able to understand them, even with explanations, right? It takes time, the background, a whole different vocabulary sometimes. And yet, here we are, living everyday life. We have a holiday coming up called Purim. And what are you supposed to do? I mean, is there anything to do? Is it just a celebration? Is it a chance to get drunk with an excuse or to just, have a family time? Just to get together once again, just like we do by the Seder. Is it a special opportunity? What is the opportunity? Do I need the opportunity? Am I happy with the way I am right now? Is there a chance to go? There's questions upon questions and things. But to start off with, it's important to understand something that is not so well understood. We have different types of holidays in the course of the year. Most of the holidays that we celebrate in the Jewish calendar are from the Torah. They're called they're Midaraisa, which is Aramaic for the Torah itself. They're God-sanctioned holidays: Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. Right? These are Chagim, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah. These are holidays found in the Chumash itself that God Himself told us to celebrate and to observe. And they're strict in terms of the laws. What you have to do. Then you have rabbinic holidays like Purim and Hanukkah. And even though that sounds like, well, it's a big step down. I mean, we can be more lenient when it comes to rabbinic holidays because it's not written in the Torah itself. But it's a mistake to assume that Purim and Hanukkah or the fast days that the rabbis instituted have any less koyach, any less power than the actual Torah holidays themselves. The only reason why they're really different is because they happened after the close of the Torah, and therefore they're not included in the Torah, but they're hinted to all over the place, just like we spoke about last week when the Gemara asked the question, Haman min Torah minayin? right? Why does it ask that question? Because the Gemara wants to understand that Purim is from the Torah. It's in the Torah. It took the rabbis. Now, you should understand, even more important to understand is that in many respects, that makes it even more important to God. Meaning, because the whole point of Ma'aseh Bereshis, the whole point of creation was to give man the opportunity to use free will, to be able to make choices and be mashlim the purpose of creation, to complete it, to perfect it, to act as a partner with God. This is not God's show. He didn't make it for himself. He didn't make it that he should do everything and we should sit back and watch it like a movie. On the contrary, he made everything as a set, and we walk across that set. As I say, all of life is a stage. It definitely is, because every situation, every opportunity, and the most amazing thing is how we don't get it, how we sort of miss the point, how we just sort of, we're here, and it's like, sitting around in an airport, a lot of times you sit there and waiting for your flight to go, and what else are you going to do? And just sit there staring at the walls and watch the people. But there's so many opportunities, especially if you have a Gemara, or you can learn, and today, especially with the internet, you can do things online. But it's like that's all life really is. There's huge opportunities. So when the rabbis came along and sanctioned Purim and Chanukah, they established them as holidays. It wasn't because that something spectacular happened and we said, hey, that's something worth remembering. Let's establish a holiday to commemorate it, and we'll celebrate it too, and eat some more food like we like to do, right? It's different than that. It's because God built into creation that Purim should occur exactly in history when it did, and he created the events. I'll give you an example of this idea. The Gemara says there's a point of disagreement between two rabbis in the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. And Rabbi Eliezer says that if the Jewish people will do tshuva, then the final redemption will come. If they don't do tshuva, no redemption. Rabbi Yeshua says, what? There won't be redemption? They don't do tshuva? Of course, and he brings a verse down to show how we don't need to do tshuva. That it'll be a timing thing. To have redemption come early, yes. But even if we don't, it's going to come at some point in time. But then he adds something. And he says, anyhow, that if we don't do the tshuva we're supposed to do because the redemption has come, has come a divinely designated time in history for redemption, then God will establish a king, like Mitzrayim, become Melech Hadash. A new king will come in who will make gezeras as difficult as Haman. How appropriate. I mean, that's the Gemara says. That's what it says. And the Jewish people will be forced to do tshuva. In other words, you're right. We will, not that if we don't do tshuva, there'll be no redemption. There's no ifs and buts about it. There has to be tshuva. You're right that there has to be tshuva, but there will be tshuva. It's not going to depend upon us, because if we have to be the ones to inspire ourselves to do tshuva, it doesn't always happen. So what does God do? Instead, he creates a situation, scenario that forces us to stop and smell the coffee, as they say, or the roses, or whatever you want to smell, and wake up to the reality of what's going on in order to actualize certain potentials in history that were required since before creation at that time. So Purim came along exactly when it did, because God wanted Purim to become a holiday. And he sent Haman. He created Haman. As the Medrash says, there had to be a Mordechai, there had to be a Haman, there had to be, and then Mordechai stepped up, and Esther was there, and Haman was doing his part to make it all happen, and likewise with Chanukah as well. So this goes even further, because the Medrash says a very remarkable thing that cannot be taken for granted. The Medrash says that all the holidays will be batal lasi lavo. All the holidays will eventually be canceled out, except for Yom Kippur and Purim. That's what it says. And what does that mean? I mean, what happens to them? So the Leshem, whom I often quote, Rabbi Shlomo Eliashiv, Rabbi Makubal, the turn of around the 19th, he died in 1926, and he explains that basically the reason why this happens is because every holiday, whether it's a Torah holiday or a rabbinic holiday, is a light. It's a specific. What do you need a holiday for? Just to commemorate the event? That's not us. We need a holiday because what happened is that when the story of Purim unfolded and the miracle took place, the mechanism to make that happen was God opening a door and allowing a light to come from a different period of history in the future, where the light's a higher, more powerful, more godly light, to sneak into our period of history and cause the miracle to happen. So every Pesach, we're not just commemorating Yetzias Mitzrayim, the going out of Egypt. Every Pesach, we're opening the door through the mitzvahs we do to allow that light to come back once again. But he explains the Leshem that the light of Pesach and Shavuos and Sukkot and Shmini Atzeres and the Chagim and the Torah itself, Rosh Hashanah even, right? All those holidays, and Rosh Chodesh will be a full holiday at that time. All those holidays are lights that belong to a future period of time called Techis HaMesim, which incidentally, according to the Zohar, is only 3 to 6 years away. And we've spoken about in the past. That's not so far. Always feels like way, way in the future, but no. So once that light becomes the everyday reality, so Hanukkah is the first holiday to go. You know why Hanukkah is the first holiday to go? Because the first period after our history is Yemos HaMashiach, the Messianic era. And Hanukkah, the light of Hanukkah that shone and caused the miracle for the Chashmonayim and the tied to the menorah and all that, that is the light of the Messianic era, Yemos HaMashiach. So once, once you have the Messianic era, you have Yemos HaMashiach, that light's going to shine every day. Who needs a special day? Who needs 8 days of the year when 365 days of the year, that light's going to shine? So Hanukkah disappears as a holiday because every day is Hanukkah. And then we go into the period of Techis HaMesim, and that's the light of Pesach and Shavuos. So those lights will happen every week. Every Sunday will be Pesach, he says. Every Monday, which is a day of judgment, because it corresponds to Gevura. So that's Rosh Hashanah, but not like it is today, where we have to prepare for Pesach, get rid of the chumetz. There'll be no chumetz at that time. Not because we won't be able to buy any, but we won't need it. It'll be a whole different level of reality and eating and enjoying life. Much higher level of reality. So the light of Techis HaMesim is the light of the Chagim. So once the resurrection, that's what it means. Techis HaMesim is the resurrection of the dead. Once we enter that period of time, so then the light of the Chagim will be every day, all the time. So we won't need special days of the year to access that light. And then this history comes. 6,000, boom. Alom Hazeh. This world is over. We begin the first stage of Olam Haba, the world to come, what's referred to as Olam Nefashos, which the Ramchal speaks about as well, when the souls get repaired for all the damage that happens during this period of history. And that's the first level of the world to come. And that's called Yom Shekulo Shabbos, a day that's completely Shabbos. So every day of the week, whatever that means, because that 6,000 time will not be like it is today. You won't need washes like we have right now. Your time will be completely different. The world will have been renewed, and every day will be Shabbos. So there won't be 6 days of the week. There's no profane days of the week anymore, so you won't need Shabbos. So Shabbos is batal. Shabbos is eliminated as a holiday, but there's still Yom Kippur and there's still Purim. Not until the next millennium, which corresponds to the Bina and the Spheres, which is a level of Yom Kippur. So every day in the next millennium will be the Kedusha, the light of Yom Kippur. Don't worry, we're not talking about fasting for 1,000 years. Okay, no one has to do. No fasting is necessary. It's just that we'll enjoy that level of godliness, and it'll be absolutely ecstasy. You won't recognize Yom Kippur compared to what it is right now. But Purim will still be a holiday. Only in the next millennium, which is the 9th millennium, which corresponds to the sphere of Chachma, is the light of Purim shining every single day, and you won't need a holiday anymore. That's mind-blowing. I mean, it's mind-boggling. How can such a rabbinic holiday, first of all, second of all, a day, even Hanukkah in some sense doesn't have all the mitzvahs of Purim, but it's not like such a fun day that people lose themselves on. I mean, Purim, like the wine itself, either makes or breaks people. There are people who on Purim who rise to phenomenal levels and achieve things they cannot achieve all year round, including on Yom Kippur. And other people who just don't get it, or they get it the wrong way, use it as a day to just let go, and they lose themselves and miss the opportunity. So the fact that Purim is such a high level means it's such a phenomenal opportunity. A door opens up on Purim like no other day of the year. And we're not just saying that. Another way of looking at this is because we see, for example, that in the Mishkan, which is the tabernacle, you had just like this rectangle, right? And you have the Holy of Holies, which is 10 amas by 10 amas, which is about 20 feet by 20 feet, or 15 feet by 15 feet, depends how much you hold an amma is. It's about a foot and a half to 2 feet. So you have then you have the Kodesh, which is the sanctuary that precedes. Look at the diagram, right? Now there's lots of them that precedes the Kodesh Kodeshim. Inside the Kodesh Kodeshim is the Aron Kodesh, the Holy Ark. Outside in the Kodesh, where only Kohanim can enter, nobody else but Kohanim can enter it, right? And the Kodesh Kodeshim, only the Kohen Gadol can enter. But in the Kodesh, you have the Shochan, which is the Lechem Panim, right? The special breads made kind of in the shape of a U, a square U, right? There's 12 of them. And they were every placed each week, and then the Kohanim got to eat them at the end of the shift. and this is called the Shochan. The Lechem Panim sit on top of that. That was to the north. And then you have the menorah to the south. You have the Ketoris, the incense offering, which we'll just leave for the time being. Also very important, hugely important. It's actually the synergy, the synthesis of both of them. But the menorah to the south, and obviously the menorah we automatically identify with Chanukah. So the menorah really, of course, in the Mishkan corresponded to Chanukah, the light of Chanukah, and the Shochan corresponds to Purim. Well, how do we see that? Well, Chanukah we don't have to talk about. That's obvious, right? We all like menorahs in Chanukah. The whole miracle was with the menorah. But the Shochan is, as the Kli Yakar points out, other Meforshim, the whole point of the Shochan was about teaching us how to be able to use the physical world L'Shem Shemayim. In the ultimate way, L'Shem Shemayim. As you eat and you drink, but for the sake of doing mitzvahs. The fact that we eat and enjoy ourselves so much in excess is not really the way it's supposed to work. I mean, we do it, and Baruch Hashem, it's a generation of tremendous affluence and availability, but it's a double-edged sword. And as a result of that, we overdo it. And because we overdo it, it comes at a cost. We don't exactly know. I mean, other than the fact that you might gain more weight than you need to, but even in terms of the world to come, are we eating up reward in the world to come? Because the whole point of the food is to elevate sparks, because the sparks are inside the food. We eat the food, we elevate the sparks, and that we should have the strength to be able to serve God. That's why we do it. The rest of the world can do pretty much whatever they want within reason, right? But we do because we're not here. This is not the world to come for us. We're going there later on. So the Shulchan represented the perfect balance between the physical world and the spiritual world in terms of how you relate to it. Now, if you look at the beginning of the Megillah, the whole thing begins with a feast, right? And the Kli Yakar points out, that brings the Medrash down, that talks about how Achashverosh, he put on the big day kahuna, and when he did his feast, he didn't just do it. He understood the whole thing had to do with the 70 years, the base of Mikdash being destroyed, and he was making a point. He wasn't just mocking the Jewish people, but he actually tried to arrange the Suda and carry out what happened there to be similar to the actual vote in the base of Mikdash. He wanted to mimic it as if to say, that part of your life is over. Now you belong to me. I'm your new Kohen Gadol, so to speak. He miscalculated the 70 years, like his predecessors, and he paid the price for it. But these people, they seem to know a lot. A lot. They seem to understand and appreciate the significance of the things we do down here. They believed in to a large degree, and they actually went to such extent to carry it through. So the Shochan is about all that balance, and it starts up with a feast. And of course, the Esther, she has two of them to get rid of Haman. Eating is a major component in the entire story of Purim. And basically, this is what we're trying to fix up anyhow on Purim. Because if you'll notice, there are 4 mitzvahs, and they go in ascending order. Most people don't think about them that way. They just think there's 4 mitzvahs in the day itself. So the 4 mitzvahs correspond to, well, they are Mikra Megillah, because that's what we do first, right? And the next morning we do Matanos of Yonim, and we do Mishloach Manos, and then of course we eventually have the Suda, which is called a Mishteh, which is called a drinking feast, but it's a Suda. That's the whole idea. And a Mishteh usually implies something that, like a bar. It's like, it's a drinking feast. That's what Achashverosh had for 180 days, a drinking feast. A lot of wine. Right? And it doesn't seem to, like a Suda, you hear the word Suda, you think Shabbos and Yantiv, holy. Mishteh doesn't sound so holy. So which is the most important mitzvah of all of them? How would you line them up? So I think most people would say Mishnah is like the least important of all. Giving to the poor, Mikra Megillah, it's part of Tanakh. So the Pri Tzaddik points out that these 4 mitzvahs actually correspond to the 4 letters of Hashem's name, which correspond to the 4 areas of the Mishkan. Because you have outside the tent, that there was a tent, big huge tent, around the entire Mishkan and enclose the area. And that's like the everyday world of Hester Panim, which corresponds to the Megillah, where God's name is not even mentioned anywhere in the Megillah, because that's the everyday world. He's there, but invisible. Elokim. Then you go inside the Mishkan and you get to a Chatzar. There's a courtyard there. That corresponds to the Vav of Hashem's name, and that corresponds to Matanas of Yonim. And then you go to the next level, you get to the Kodesh, which now you're approaching the Mishkan itself, the little, rectangular, 30 amas by 10 amas wide, right? You enter that. That's the first. The Kodesh is the first level, with the menorah and the shulchan and the Ketoris, right? And that corresponds to the Hay, which is the Bina. And then of course you have the Kodesh Kodeshim, the Holy of Holies, which corresponds to the Yud, which corresponds to the Mishteh. So it turns out that the mitzvah that you would think to be the least important of them all is actually the most important of them all. One of the no one makes this connection that I'm aware of, but when you hear it and you see it, it makes such beautiful sense, because it's like this idea. And what is it? So it turns out when Shlomo, everything's hashgacha pratis. God set this up. It didn't happen accidentally. They didn't plan it this way. Hashgacha pratis. God set this up. That when Shlomo HaMelech finished his Beis HaMikdash was Rosh Hashanah, and they decided that they should be having a 14-day celebration, like Suda Siyum, for the finishing of the Beis HaMikdash. And the rabbi said, "Listen, 14 days, Yom Kippur comes 10 days into that. Why don't we put it off until after Yom Kippur, and then we can do it straight, with Suf all the way through and have 14 days, as opposed to breaking it up with Yom Kippur and have to go, stop and go back, So someone said, no, we don't push it. We don't put off a siyum. Generally you don't. If you finish a tractate of Gemara, you do it as soon as possible, ideally. But a Beis HaMikdash, Yom Kippur is a Torah holiday. Shlomo HaMelech, the wisest man that ever lived, said, nope, Rosh Hashanah, we start, it goes 14 days. That means we're going to have to eat on Yom Kippur. This pushes off the Torah mitzvah of eating on Yom Kippur. It is astounding that this is one of the beauties of Judaism. How you have these things that just jump out at you, like where does this come from? Where is this? How does this fit in? And because it's so outside the box, it pushes you to the next level of understanding. And it says they actually ate that Yom Kippur as part of the siyum, and they were worried, now that they did it, even though there was sanction and the rabbis, everybody was on board, and they did it. The whole nation. It's beyond comprehension, and they were worried that maybe it was a mistake. Not Shlomo, he was fine, but other people. And it says a bas kol came out and said that the generation is muchan la'olam haba. They're all going to the world to come. Now, normally, a regular Yom Kippur that we fast and daven the whole day, hopefully with kavana, we're grateful if we just hear muchan l'shana haba, that we're going to live another year. That's already to go to the world to come. We're not even thinking like that. That's like the last day of your life. But the entire generation, why? Because they got it right. It was Mama's Yom Kippurim. It was Purim. Why? Because it's one thing to become holy without food, to become like an angel, to get to that level by working yourself and fasting and davening the whole time and just staying in shul as much as you possibly can. yeah, it's not easy to do all that, but if you do that, it certainly is much easier to stay on a higher level of spirituality. But how do you do it in the world while eating food? If anybody that day had eaten and said, since I'm eating anyhow, wow, I'm really enjoying this, but I'm going to have a bit more, not because I'm celebrating the temple, but because I just want to have more, that little bit, he gets excitation. He gets cut off, chorus. Like a person on Yom Kippur who has to eat because the halacha is they have to eat. They're sick, they're older, whatever the case may be. In the halacha is they must eat in Yom Kippur. So they eat in what's called shiurim. They eat like in certain increments, certain amounts to try to minimize the breaking of Yom Kippur. It's not breaking Yom Kippur because the halacha says they have to eat, but still, don't go overboard with it. Because going overboard, if you eat more than you really have, it's very hard to be exact. You're doing the best you can. That's all God expects. But if a person becomes, sloppy, and figures, anyhow, I'm eating Yom Kippur. The fast is over for me. Let me have a feast. No. Whatever extra you eat, you're breaking Yom Kippur. You've eaten as much as you have to. That's the mitzvah. To eat more than that, you're breaking Yom Kippur. Doesn't work that way. So they got to this fantastic, incredible level where they achieve this balance of the physical and the spiritual that they accomplish on that Yom Kippur of eating what the rest of us don't accomplish in the course of many Yom Kippurs of fasting. A remarkable story to be understood on a much deeper and more profound level. More than likely they had Siyata Shemaya because they were so L'Shem Shemayim, they were so into for the right reasons that God helped them out to make sure everything worked out the way it's supposed to work out. But it just goes to show you how that's what it's about. But take it to the next level now. This is like, this is every day. You have the Chanukah, which is the menorah. You have the Shoch, which is Purim. and you have this together they're like two legs, two sides of the same coin, not really, but the same coin. This is it's a package deal. Not like there's Purim, there's Chanukah. They're both necessary. Originally, I thought that Purim was that, but we and it should have been enough, but we went down low, further. So therefore, God said, okay, here's Chanukah too. No. There always had to be a Purim, and there always had to be a Chanukah, and it was planned from Ma'aseh Bereshis, from creation, and not only that, by the way, you should know that according to Kabbalah, there's something called the 620 Amudi Or, which are such a primordial, sublime level of light. I can't even tell you what it is. It's like the top of everything. I mean, literally the top. 620 pillars of light. And what do they correspond to? The 613 mitzvahs that are from the Torah and the 7 mitzvahs of the rabbis came along and implemented after. So, I mean, if that doesn't show you the koyach, the power, but they're only flesh and blood. I mean, God's God. He knows, and He can establish it. He can make it. The parameter, even the rabbis, even if they get heavenly help. But the answer is because, and this is the way history works. And this is the basis of so much Kabbalah. That you have to understand it, but it's like our own personal lives are really an example of it. We're born with potential. All the potential we're ever going to need in life, and then some, comes with us when we're born, when we're conceived. From the moment we're conceived, we're microscopic. There's a cell, that's gonna split and then increase. It's like all the potential is already there. Where is it? It's invisible, kind of, but it's all there. And you're born with it. All of your potential for your entire life, right? Whether you're going to keep your hair or lose your hair, whether you're going to have certain strengths, whether you're going to weaken, gain weight, not. Those are the physical things. But even spiritually, it's all there. So what happens? Well, you'll notice in life, for the most part, that we're not so motivated. That literally necessity is the mother of invention, meaning it's the crises that make us accomplish. It's the things it's the events that we don't have much control over that forces us to behave a certain way, to talk a certain way, to act a certain way, to respond a certain way. If it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have done that. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have done this. But that's what's always going on. And the reason why it happens is not because randomly history is unfolding, but every last detail of history is God orchestrating events specifically because he says, at this moment in time, I want X, Y, and Z to become actualized. And for that to happen, I have to inspire Polonium, this person, that person, to do the following things. And therefore, he creates a whole situation that everyone looks at differently based upon who they are and their mentality and all they become, and say, oh, well, that's what's going on. I'm going to do the following thing. I mean, I'm just responding to the situation. But in that response, I'm actualizing potential that until now was latent. Every shacharis, every time you go to pray the morning prayer, it may be the same words, same minyan, same time of day. It's never the same davening. If you approach it, with a let's say fair attitude, that it's like it's another davening. What's the difference? I did it yesterday. God willing, I'll do it tomorrow as well. Every davening is different because every day you're getting the opportunity to access new potential and to actualize it that wasn't there before, and you're building yourself in the process. And we're going to be evaluated on how much God says, I gave you all this, and this is what you became. This is as much as you chose. But the truth is, at the end of the day, do we even have much choice? Because we see, look at history that's happening today. Look what's going on. Look how we're being forced to respond. Look how once upon a time sitting on the fence was easy to do. you could be invisible. But the issues today and the feelings today and what's going on today forces people to have to take a side. Forces people to have to respond, forces people to have to write things they never would have written about in the past, or to read things they wouldn't have read in the past, or to accomplish things they wouldn't have accomplished if it wasn't for that specific thing. That's what's always going on. And the only question comes down to who is going to respond to the call? Who is going to be the fortunate one to rise up and be a Mordechai or to be an Esther? But what are we really trying to accomplish in the end? So I don't know if you recall from our Kabbalah sessions, 101, for whatever you call them. But there's a very simple way, well, kind of simple way, to explain the whole thing. If you look at the end of Parshas Beshalach, we're talking about Amalek. Amalek is a nemesis of the Jewish people. Amalek is the basis of Haman, whether he was born in Amalek, whether he just, he was imbued with Amalek's spirit, Hitler, Yamach Zichro, all the real serious enemies of the Jewish people. And they can be Jewish too, by the way. They don't have to be Gentile. They can be Jewish as well. By any Jew who stands up and tries to, obliterate the Torah way of life on any level, can be imbued with a spirit of Amalek too. We're all capable of being a Paro and Amalek, a Haman in our own way. But Amalek, in essence, is in Parshas Beshalach. He attacks the Jewish people, and then God says, takes an oath, Yad al Kes Ka, which means my hand is on my throne. Rashi points out the word Kes is really supposed to be Kisei, which means throne. Chaf Samech is like we're missing a letter over here, the Aleph. We spoke about the Aleph before. It's in my book, Redemption to Redemption. Right? And then, of course, Ka, Yud K, is only 2 letters from God's name. So that forces Rashi to actually bring a very obscure medrash that not so well known. And he brings it down, but it becomes a principle for all of life. He says that Amalek, God says that as long as Amalek is alive and around, my throne is not complete and my name's not complete. So the Vav K and the Yud K are separate from each other. So Amalek essentially divides the name of God, at least in the minds of people. He can't touch the name of God. God's name is unified no matter what, but it has to do with appearances, has to do with how we perceive it. So Amalek, the Kitzer, essentially is anything that makes a person doubt the existence of God or doubt that God is involved in the affairs of man, very specifically, not in a general sense, but in a very specific sense, making things happen, drawing our potential out. That's what Amalek does. So Kabbalah says it's not just Yud K and Vav K we're talking about over here, but it's also Elohim. It's the same idea, same name of God, just a lesser level, but also Elohim. That's the name we're principally trying to fix up. And because Amalek divides it. How does he there's 5 letters, Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yud, Mem. That's how you spell Elohim, except with the Hey, right? And he makes a division between the first three letters and the Yud. What, he takes a piece of paper and he rips it? What does he do? What does it mean? Same idea, right? If you look, the prophet says, Hosea, and I think Yeshaya too, Mi bara Ella. So these are Hebrew words. Who created these? Looking at the creation, looking at who? He knows who. He's being rhetorical over here. God obviously created these things. Me, who? Bara created Ella, these. That's what the pasuk says. But Kabbalah says, oh, it means more than that. Me actually is the gematria 50, and therefore alludes to the level of Bina, which we'll see is the basis of Purim. And Eila is Aleph Lamed Hey, which has a gematria 36, which corresponds to the 6 which run our history. 6 spheres, 6 days of creation, 6,000 years. That's the base of our history. And Mi Bar Ela means that our world, obviously, just like a father and mother give birth to a child, who later on gives birth to their own child, is already going, level after level. Likewise, the upper spheres give birth to the lower sphere. So Mi Bar Ela means that the sphere of Bina, her children, in a sense, are the spheres that came after that. So Mi Bar Ela, that's what it says. That's what it means. That's what this pasuk is alluding to. So as long as the Mi of Bina is attached to the Eila of the level below, paradise, no confusion, Messianic era, as long as they're attached. Because the light of God just flows and flows and flows, and everybody, wow, he's really there. It's true. I can see it. I relate to it. Like a person was a Baal Tshuva, personal level. I don't believe in God. The guy says, prove it to me. And he comes and he fights. I witnessed this firsthand. He fights and doesn't believe. And after a while, he starts to realize he's mistaken. And, all of a sudden, one day, he realized, that's the point. It's true. He does exist. And then once he sees that, he can stand it. And in his own personal mind, in his own personal life, the me and the live come together. That's the tikkun. That's what you're doing in your own personal life. That's what you're doing in your own personal marriage. You're raising your kids. That's not just drifting through on a raft down the Mississippi River, and enjoy the scenery. We're here to do that, specifically the Jewish people. That's what we do. How do we do it? Well, take a look. It's not so hard to understand how to do it, but how to actually accomplish it, that's another story. Just take a look. We have so many Jews in this country. We're divided. We're divided. That people who are yelling and saying this is not anti-democracy. It's not abuse of human rights, but their mentality, the way they look at the world, the way they understand, they don't believe in Torah, they don't believe in God, they don't believe in absolute truth, so they're confused and mistaken, like most of the world, because everything else, if there's no absolute truth, as we said before, it just becomes an opinion. And how many people in this world have an opinion based upon anything that can be considered absolute to be true? You need an absolute outside opinion, and we can compare it to tell what fact is right, what's wrong. And then you have the other side that lives by Torah, believes in Torah, and they're not getting it correct. We have other things to fix about our own over here, where it's far from perfect, but at least we're in the ball game. At least we kind of know more or less what's supposed to happen. And clashing. That's the result of the me and the Ela being separate. The light's not flowing down, only minimally. So there's a minimum amount of people who are buying into it. By for example, that changed it. There were a lot of people, same thing. But the miracle of Purim allowed that to happen as a result of the geula of God's presence. Through the miracle, through what happened, through what Mordechai did in the story of Haman, that it brought together. So basically, by celebrating Purim in the proper way, that's what we're trying to achieve. By going from level to level to level, by going Mikra Megillah, the first level. It's wake up and realize, wait a second, God's real. It's not just an idea. Once upon a time, he spoke to us, and we have his Torah way down the road. He's just as here today as he ever was. What does that mean to me? How am I supposed to, act according to that? How is it supposed to impact me? And then you have, of course, Batos of Yoni, getting it to the door. Why is this important? So the Rambam says, just we're acknowledging that God took care of us on Purim, so we take care of others as well. Just as God raised up the spirits of a downtrodden nations, we also raise up the spirits of downtrodden people, but it's more than that. The Gemara says there are 3 ways to get to know what a person's really like inside: through how they drink, how they deal with their money, and whether they get angry in situations. Money is a major revealer of a person's inside. How you deal with your money on the outside shows you how you relate to them on the inside. And for the most part, people, they work for their money. And because they work for their money is theirs in their mind. If I give to a poor person who's asking me for money, it's because I'm being a generous person. When in fact, it's not that way at all. Again, it's a clear covered out on the Parshiot, the Mishkan and all that we're basically bank tellers. The fact that you worked for your money is an opportunity, and it's called serving God. You got money for it? Be grateful. It's really God's money, and to extend you can give that and share that with people who need it, really belongs to them, because that's why you're getting it through divine providence. That shows you're real with the concept of Elohim, of God. And then, of course, the next level, right, is honest. Where not only are you giving somebody else, you're sharing it, working again toward unification of the Jewish people. Then finally, the last level is a Mishnah, where you're actually you're eating and drinking, but rather than allow it to make you more animalistic, to become less holy, on the contrary, it's having the opposite effect. It's make you even holier. When you do that, you unify the Eileh and the Yud Mem. What's interesting in the Gemara, right, it chooses these 3 things: Kiso, Koso, Bakaso. No Picasso, right? It's Picasso, right? So Kiso is his wallet, and Koso is his cup, and Kaso is his anger, right? So whether the person is generous, whether the person can drink and still maintain their spirituality, and whether the person is angry, because getting angry seems to imply that God is not on the person. Whoever injured you, right? They went against the will of God, and so therefore you can afford to get angry, but God arranges. What are you getting angry about? To the extent that a person can have things happen to them and maintain themselves is proof positive they understand that everything's divine providence. What's interesting is that they have all 3, because there's lots of things we could have added to this list, but these are nice because they all have the same 2 letters. They have Chaf and Samech, like from the Parsha Kesal Ka, right, by Amalek. Chaf Samech from Kisei. That's more of a Hanukkah story, but not right now. But in between, what they don't have in common is the middle letter. And Kos is a Vav, and Kas is an Ayin, and Kis is a Yud. And if you add them up, you add up the 3 inside those letters, the Gematria of Elohim, with the Hey, with the actual name itself. In other words, Yud K, Vav K versus Elohim. Are you so real with the reality of God, the concept of God, that it's so forefront that when you see these protesters, for example, you see what's happening in the world, in America, you watch the news, because the news, for example, just report the events. They believe their whole reality is what they see. That's what they talk about. That's what's real to them. They don't see Hashem or any greater plan. History evolves, and it's like a river, it meanders, and here we are today doing this, and let's respond to that. That's not us. We look and say, if Hashem is arranging this to happen right now, then what is it that we're supposed to accomplish? Excuse me. What is it we're supposed to accomplish? What is it we're supposed to be bringing out right now? I see what's going on. I see all these people, and they're doing their thing, but it's talking to me on a higher level than just the events of every day, than just talking about reforms in the Knesset. That's part of the picture, but that's more of the cause, of the trigger for something, than it is the actual story itself. The bigger story is the Aleph Lamed Hey and the Yud Mem, Yud K and the Vav K, joining them together to bring the reality of God into the world even more so. Purim is a phenomenal opportunity to meditate on these things, to think about it, before you go boldly into that day and run around, with your costume, which is great, and there's a whole story behind that too, and you do the mitzvahs of the day. Think to yourself, make a goal, have a plan, right? Ask yourself, what can I do that at the end of the day, when the Purim is over, I can look back and I can say, wow, I moved up a notch. God became that much more real to me. Because when you do that, you draw the light down. It flows through you out into the world, and it brings tikkun. Even if you can't see it, you can't recognize that tikkun. But that's all that's going on today in history, all through history. Whether it was World War II, whether it was the Holocaust, whatever, all of it was God instrumented, God manipulated, trying to focus us and bring out of us things that otherwise we'd be sleeping over because we just don't know they're there, and we don't necessarily have the inspiration on our own to do anything about it. So seize the moment, seize the opportunity. It's only one day. It comes and goes so incredibly fast, and it's a lot of fun. And the weather report, B'ezras Hashem, seems it's going to be very positive, very, very good. No rain, as far as no cold weather, things like that. But it's the door is going to open, and a huge amount of light is going to come down that day. Not the sun too. The sun also, but not that light, a more powerful spiritual light, a transforming light. Be ready for it. Because, as we'll see later, B'ezras Hashem, Purim is the most important stepping stone we have to Pesach. Because if you don't get Purim right, it's very hard to get Pesach right too. That's the bridge to go from there. So, Purim Sameach. We should have a wonderful Purim. Should be filled with joy. Only good news. Klal Yisrael should be able to finally witness and experience the full redemption without any more suffering, without much, any more difficulty. We don't know where things are going to go next, but we do know that everything presents an opportunity for us to grow even higher, and we should seize that opportunity and get the proper heavenly help, to accomplish those great things and be an instrument, be a partner with God in the rectification of creation.
Right. Thank you, Rabbi. And wow, that was very special and very deep and exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Sponsored by the Miriam Project Geula Hour and Josh Wander of BringThemHome.org. He's doing Miluim in the Army right now. And so he hasn't able to join us for a couple weeks. Thank you for joining us. And Purim Sameach, everybody.